A few weeks ago, I was out for an early evening stroll in my neighborhood in DC. The spring blossoms were just starting to burst forth, casting a soft pink glow over the stately row houses. It was one of those sublime moments when the human and natural dramas converge and you feel suspended between the vast, unhurried rhythms of the cosmos and the frenetic daily churn right in front of you. As I paused to soak it in, a young mother pushing a stroller hurried past, her face etched with weariness and worry. "Do you ever feel like you're just barely keeping your head above water?" she asked, not really looking for a response. Before I could say anything, she plowed ahead. "The cost of everything keeps going up and up. The grocery bills, the rent, I don't know how we're going to make it." Her plaintive words hung in the air like the fragrance of the cherry blossoms, at once lovely and laden with melancholy truth. For this is the paradox of our modern condition: the marvels of human civilization surround us, the product of centuries of accumulated genius and grit. And yet, the eternal struggle to secure basic material well-being rages on, an endless cycle of booms and busts, inflations and recessions. The latest chapter in this saga played out this week with the release of new inflation data from the federal government. The numbers showed that price increases slowed slightly in April to an annual rate of 3.4%. For those keeping score at home, that's a dip from March's 3.5% rate and the first time in months that the data didn't overshoot economists' already lofty expectations. In the staid, just the facts phrasing, favored by many analysts, this was described as something of a relief. But let's call it what it is: a brief gasp of air, before plunging back into the turbulent economic waters that have left so many gasping for breath. The markets responded with glee, of course. Stock indexes hit new highs and government bond yields dipped as traders revved up their rate cut bets, pricing in the near certainty that the Federal Reserve will have to pivot from its inflation-fighting interest rate hikes to begin lowering borrowing costs again sometime this year. And the eternal debate goes on. The Biden administration will inevitably tout this latest data point as a victory in the inflation reduction battle, a sign that their policies are working and the dismal days of soaring prices are finally behind us. A White House statement will likely emphasize the progress being made. Meanwhile, the skeptics will scoff at an inflation rate still north of 3%, more than a full percentage point above the Fed's 2% target, is nothing to celebrate. Sure, prices may no longer be skyrocketing at the alarming rates seen last year, but the overall cost of living remains stubbornly, painfully high for legions of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. An Oxford economics analyst summed it up as a very small step in the right direction. So where does the truth lie? As is so often the case, it's somewhere in the mushy middle between the polarized rhetoric emanating from the partisan camps. On one side, you have those White House morning in America types who seem to think that simply arresting the freefall of an economic indicator is tantamount to mission accomplished. On the other, the incessant doomsayers who will never be satisfied until we achieve micropricing nirvana and every last trace of inflation is exorcised from the land. The reality is that economies are like the tides, constantly shifting in sweeping cycles driven by incalculable forces both within and beyond our control. A brief respite in inflationary pressures may indeed be a signal that the worst is behind us. Or it could just as easily be the rueful calm before another tempest strikes and the prices begin their inexorable ascent once more. No one truly knows. What we do know is that the human dramas play out heedless of the grand economic vicissitudes. For that young mother in my neighborhood and millions like her, the only things that matter are the cruel arithmetic on the grocery receipts and mounting piles of bills on the kitchen counter. The recondite Fed models and prognostications from Wall Street analysts are so much white noise, distant thunder that might one day break overhead and upend life once more. My Burkean conservatism tells me there is wisdom in accepting a certain level of insecurity and discomfort as the inescapable bargains we strike in this terribly imperfect world. The great march of human progress doesn't follow a straight, preordained path but instead winds erratically through periods of light and darkness, want and abundance. So let's savor these small eddies of optimism when they swirl our way, even as we gird ourselves for the inevitable upstream battles still to come. The long human story is one of resilience in the face of ceaseless flux, enduring the trials and fleeting joys that life sends our way. As I continued my evening walk, the first fireflies of the season began to wink in the twilight, flashing in silent cosmic communion with the cherry blossom petals drifting down around me. It was a reminder that the grand cycles will continue to turn long after our present economic dramas have faded, just another passing eddy in the eternal cosmic stream.